beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Won't you spagoodle? Won't you spagoodle?
I feel like we're significantly more dumb filming this at home.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're gonna be like,
It's like not not professional. We're doing a lot of this backwards.
Let me crack open a tree and welcome to another episode of Underrated or Overrated, Mean Training Home Edition. Welcome to our kitchen. We haven't done these in a hot minute, so we've decided we're just gonna bust out the camera and bang one of these out. We both really enjoy doing these, and we got a bunch of great suggestions for topics from Instagram. So if you have any other further topics you want us to talk about, leave them in the comments below or hit us up on Instagram. Let us know what you want us to talk about in the next episode. We'll just jump right into it. First suggestion is going to be coming from our sweet baby boy, Jordan, at Tanaman. Thank you for the suggestion, along with all the other terrible ones. Underrated or overrated, tracking macros.
Ooh. All right, Jordan. I know you are not tracking your macros because you watched Hormozy and he just told you to eat a pound of ground beef. So I'll answer your question anyways. I think that tracking macros is underrated for beginners, overrated for more advanced or seasoned lifters, athletes, etc.
And why is that?
Because as a beginner, a lot of times what I see with nutrition coaching and just with coaching in general, a lot of the questions and a lot of the confusion comes from people just not understanding what they're currently eating. A lot of people have an idea of what it is, and then once they actually start tracking, they realize that it is wildly different than what they thought it was. I'll give like a good example. So every time I start nutrition coaching, the first thing I have people do is I'll have them take photos of all the food that they're eating for usually anywhere from like 4 days to a week so that I can get a really good idea of what their daily intake looks like. And usually our first call goes something like, what do you need help with nutrition? And client says, well, I'm eating really well and I'm eating really healthy, but I don't know why I'm not insert X goal, losing weight, getting stronger, whatever. And then to which I say, I think that you're probably wildly underestimating whatever it is that you think you're doing. Mm-hmm. Underestimating or overestimating. And so usually what happens is after that first few days of tracking with the photos, where they're taking photos of everything they're sending, they're eating and drinking, I will take that and I will track it out based on the photos. And that gives me and the client a really good idea of where they're currently at. Because usually those numbers are very different than what they thought it was going to be. They think that they're hitting their protein goal and they're like 80 grams shy, you know? And so that's really for the beginner. I view tracking macros as a tool for giving you education and giving you a really good understanding of where you're currently at and what you actually need to be putting into your body to hit those goals. For whatever your goal is, losing weight, losing body fat, getting stronger, getting bigger, whatever it is. I think it's super, super beneficial for people that are just starting out to do that for a good amount of time. I usually have people do it for at least 6 months. So that's like part one to that answer. Part two, though, is that after you have been tracking your macros for a while and after you have been maintaining nutrition habits for a good amount of time, you don't need to be tracking every day, unless you like it. Some people like it. Some people feel like it keeps them accountable, keeps them on track. Some people just love numbers. Like that is also like very valid and very, up to the individual. But I think for more advanced athletes, people that have been doing this for a while, people that are in a good rhythm, that know their body, that are very consistent, it's really not going to do too much other than just kind of tell you what you already know, right? And so unless your goals wildly change, unless like, let's say Ricky right now is training for his 50 miler, he's like, you know what? I actually want to do a bodybuilding show. then I would be like, you for sure need to start tracking your macros again, even though you haven't done it in like who knows how many years at this point, right? Because you're like, I know the exact amount of fuel I need for my runs. I know the exact amount of calories I need to be eating to hit those goals. And you don't need to necessarily be hitting it on the nose every single day, but you know what that amount of food looks like because you have been eating this way for so long. You know how much protein you need to be getting. You're good at self-regulating when you didn't hit that. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I don't think that every person needs to track forever. And I tell nutrition clients this all the time. I'm like, hey, I know tracking kind of sucks. It's kind of cumbersome. It's not really fun to do. You don't need to do it forever. Once you build the habits, once you're used to knowing portion sizes, you're used to knowing density of those different macronutrients, you know what kind of foods you need to be eating to hit those goals, you're probably going to be fine. You'll be able to maintain. But if your goals wildly change, then you'll probably need to start tracking again.
I do think, too, on the point of the experienced athlete not needing to track, I think a lot of it comes also with just like this intuition with your own body, right? Like you kind of know like, oh man, like there's days where we're like craving a steak and we're like, we probably didn't eat enough protein, you know, like listening to your body and like what it needs and the fuels. You get kind of like a better idea of like, this is what I need and this is what I'm craving. I'm craving these things for a reason. I think that's a big part of it as well. My follow-up, I have 2 questions for you. One, who would you say is the number 1 person tracking macros is for? And then 2, what is the best tool you would give someone to track those macros?
Newbie trying to lose weight or gain weight, but that's less common.
Okay.
More common is someone trying to lose weight, someone specifically that doesn't know why they're not losing weight. And I see that a lot too. People are like, yeah, I'm like in a calorie deficit, but I'm not losing weight. I'm like, you're not in a calorie deficit. You think you are, but you're not. Yeah,
that's a good point.
That's the person that is most helpful for. And method for tracking, there's so many ways out there. I still think that, unfortunately, MyFitnessPal is still the best. It's still king. The main reason for that is because it has been around the longest. It's like the Craigslist of the fitness industry. It's like just been around and it's exactly the same as it's always been. But
big database.
Big database. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. Is like you scan something, I don't know, like you can literally go to a chi. Well, it has 0 calories, so that's like, you know. But you go to like, I've gone to like H Mart and like pulled like a random Korean ingredient and I scan it and MyFitnessPal has it. I'm like, they just been doing it for a while. So I would still say MyFitnessPal is probably king for tracking. The other thing I will say, kind of a side tangent, sort of still on the macro tracking topic though. When you track, you will be very surprised at portion sizes if you're tracking correctly. If you're tracking by weighing things, which is the best way to do it, that is going to probably blow your mind when you find out what a serving size of peanut butter actually looks like. You're going to be like, holy shit. I've been eating
way too much
Ricky
peanut butter.
It's like 4 servings of peanut butter.
Well aware of it though.
So there's like those kind of things that you, like, oh, an Oreo serving size is 2. Like not a sleeve, 2.
Who stops at 2 Oreos?
Psychopaths.
Yeah, exactly.
And bodybuilders.
Fair. So, yeah. It's the portion control is very important. And I think once people realize that, especially on like you said, like the weight loss side is like the more common reason people do track. And it is just that realization. It is like, I think people are like, I'm not eating enough protein, and then I'm eating way too many calories. And it's just in sneaky ways that you didn't know until you just, the intentionality behind tracking. And you realize like, oh man.
Yeah. So, official answer, Jordan. Tracking macros for a beginner, underrated. For someone that's been in the game, been doing it for a long time, doesn't have any significant goal changes, overrated.
Boom. I like it.
All right. Okay, I'm going to ask you this next one.
Okay.
Overrated or underrated? Cold plunge, sauna, compression boots, example, Normatec. fad things like that. So some of those like more newer gadgety recovery items, it sounds like, is kind of what this question is asking. Shout out to Michael Morikawa.
Shout out to Michael. And this is, I think, his second suggestion. Great
This
one.
is good. Always have good suggestions, Michael.
Thank you,
We
Michael.
appreciate it. So yes, cold plunge, sauna, compression boots, fad things like that. Sounds like in the recovery space particularly.
Yeah.
Overrated or underrated in your opinion?
This is a great question. And I also assume this is based because he's also an athletic trainer for a college. So he works with a lot of athletes. A big part of athletics is recovery, right? It's like you're pushing. I mean, you know this very well, especially like on the road to nationals. Like the workouts are like one thing, but then it's like, how do you like get the body prepared for the next grinding workout, right? To like slowly build that body up and to the right. I think in general, I think if I'm painting the broadest stroke possible, I would say all of those things are overrated. And the reason for that is I think we've talked about this before. I feel like it's like one of those, these are all to me fall in the pebbles category of like, there's the big boulders of fitness, of training consistently, eating well, sleeping. That's like the big boulders, right? Those are things we should be focusing on. And the things like cold plunges, the things like saunas, the things like compression boots are more of like those pebbles that I think are very specific and very valuable in certain circumstances, but not necessarily like you need to be doing it in order to see your goals. I think for the general population, you don't need to be utilizing those things. And this is with like, we're saying this, we have a cold plunge on our way to our house right now. We're going to get one. So we obviously are going to be utilizing that. I personally love compression boots. I personally love the sauna. But I think it's one of those things like, unless you're either trying to hit like, if you're trying to get like that edge, like that next like 1% edge, and you find like that you enjoy those things, then I would say do it, you know, like utilize them. I just wouldn't be relying on them entirely. Like, don't think just because you get a sauna and cold plunge, all of a sudden your goals are going to be maximized and all of a sudden like you're going to see all the progress you want to see, or your recovery is going to be so much better because of it. There might be a factor of that, but it's not going to be like the main reason you're, you know, any of those things happen.
Like, don't skip your workout to get in the cold plunge.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's like it should be the thing that's you add on after the big boulders. These are like additives. These are things that will enhance for sure. There are great benefits. There's studies that have shown like, especially the sauna, it's been around forever. Like, you know, it's one of those things like we can talk about, like he mentioned fad things. So I think certain fad stuff for sure, like super overrated. Things like the sauna, like OG, not infrared saunas, but like OG saunas, it's been around forever.
Yeah.
Cold plunging, you know, like the cold tubs are like new because of Instagram and they're getting popular social media, but people have been jumping in cold water for a very long time for health benefits.
Shout out to Wim Hof.
Shout out to Wim Hof. And then, you know, like, so those two specifically, I think are like more on the underrated side, even though they are very popular. But at the end of the day, they are things that like you and I don't cold plunge or sauna regularly. We're both plenty fit. We're both we're seeing all the goals, the progress we want to be seeing in our own, like.
We live in the country.
We live in Kahalu and there's a rooster outside enjoying this episode. Live crowd. Well, sir.
Chicken. Underrated or overrated?
Dude. So overrated. F chickens.
They're delicious.
They are delicious. But all that to say, I would say it still is overrated just because it's not the most important thing to people's fitness goals. I think in Michael's situation, working with like collegiate athletes, it's probably more underrated. Like I would recommend like some sort of like sauna, cold plunge, especially if you like, there's like a tangible, like for them, they feel better when they do those things, even if it may be like a placebo effect, you know, per se. if it helps the athletes feel better and feel like they're recovering better, I don't think there's no harm in doing them.
That's what I was going to ask, was the role of placebo in those things. I know there's absolutely studies done on real measurable effects of stuff like the cold plunge, like the sauna, compression boots, massage guns. I know there's definitely real tangible evidence there, but how much of a role do you think placebo feels or plays into it? Because I know that a lot of people will say, like, they just make me feel better. Right? And I think that in itself is already warranted to, hey, if you know something's going to make you feel better, you should do it.
Yeah, totally. And as long as it's not harming the individual, like, I mean, if you're in the cold plunge for like 15 minutes and you're creating like issues with your circulatory system, like your circulation, right? And like your, like it's causing like damage.
You're passing out in the sauna.
Yeah, like you're pushing it to extremes. Too much of anything is bad, right? But if it isn't causing any harm, if it's making the individual feel better, I say do it. Like, why not? So even if it is, in that specific case, a placebo effect, if it's helping them, especially in athletic performance, I feel like, so much of athletics is like,
how do you feel?
Exactly. It's like if a baseball player goes on the mound, he's about to throw a pitch, it doesn't matter, like, whatever. If he doesn't feel good, throwing that ball is not going to come out good out of his hand, right? So that's the way I look at it with athletic performance, especially. But
yeah, it's a good point.
I'll say overall, overrated.
Overrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would probably agree with that summarization.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Next question we got from Annie Sadamoto. She asks, overrated or underrated, timing of when you should have certain meals in a day?
Timing of when you should have certain meals?
Yeah. So I'm going to assume this is more referring to, like, I think a lot of times people, I think on two things. I think specifically when it comes to utilization of, like, people get kind of fixated on, like, utilization of, like, oh, should I have like a pre-workout, post-workout meal? Should I be eating? I heard I shouldn't be eating right before I go to bed. Like, like those kind of things. I feel like that's like something that gets thrown around a lot in the fitness space of, I want to be sure I'm intermittent fasting the first few hours of the morning. I want to make sure I don't eat anything past 7 p.m. I want to make sure I have a pre-workout, a post-workout. Do you feel like all those things are overrated or underrated?
Okay. I'm going to answer this in the context of my nutrition clients that I work with that don't have specific athletic or performance goals. Because I think that's a separate conversation for athletic and performance goals. Just Jane wants to lose weight. Jane works an office job. Jane goes to the gym 3 times a week and she needs help with her nutrition. I would say that timing of meals in the lens of consistency of timing in meals, I would say it's actually underrated. Because I find what happens for a lot of people, especially that I work with, what happens is they get carried away throughout their day and their meals become very inconsistent. So without naming names, like a newer client that I'm working with right now, he is someone that has long spans of working. He has long work blocks, but it's not like a standard schedule every day where they clock in, they clock out at the same time. So their schedule fluctuates from day to day, but when they do have their work, it's like a block of like 8 hours straight. And so that causes their meal timing to be very inconsistent, which therefore then bleeds into some days they eat 1 meal, some days they eat 2 meals, some days they eat 6 meals. It's like all over the place because of that inconsistency in their scheduling and in their timing. So for someone like that, and that is something I see pretty often with people that aren't really on like a regular schedule, or someone that like gets caught up in stuff, like let's say you get pulled into a lot of meetings and those meetings like run through lunch, and then you have to go to the gym after, and so you try to get your workout in without being properly fueled, and then you feel like crap and all of those things. I would say for that person it's underrated because it doesn't matter what you're eating. If you're eating like 2 meals a day and then the next day you're eating 6, it doesn't matter what you're eating. Your body's not going to run well. It's not going to feel good.
Right.
So I think for that person, it's underrated. And I think that it's something that I see a lot is an issue with people that have those hectic schedules. I know it happens a lot with moms too. It's like you're like kind of just like snacking all day, or you're like eating like the sandwiches from your kid, or the crust from your kids' like sandwiches.
Yeah.
And then you're just like never like really eating a full on meal. So I think it's maybe less of a timing thing, and it's more of a consistency thing. That I would say it's underrated. And I think that's why meal prepping helps so many people, and that's why I recommend so many people meal prep. Pretty much everyone I work with, I recommend they meal prep, because then you have your food portioned in a container, you grab it, you eat it. It takes 10 minutes, 5 minutes to eat it, and then you move on. But you're able to consistently do that. And you never have an excuse of like, oh, I don't have food on me, or, oh, I have to go buy something, or, whatever it is. Because I think that alone for people already is such a big difference, because then they start feeling better, they start feeling well-fueled, they start feeling consistent energy from day to day, and it's not like a thing where it's like, I'm all over the place because I'm just super inconsistent with my meal timing. Underrated for those people. I think if we're starting to get into the lens of like the anabolic window and eating protein right before you go to sleep and getting up in the middle of the night to have a protein shake, I think all of that is way overrated.
Yeah.
Eat protein, get it in after your workout. Eat carbs, get it in before your workout. It's not that big of a deal. We don't need to split hairs about it.
Yeah. If you don't drink your protein shake within 30 minutes of your workout, you will still make gains.
Yeah. Like that kind of stuff, I think people get real
interesting.
People start to make the minors into the majors with that stuff.
That's really interesting, because my initial reaction to reading that question before you responded would have been overrated because of those reasons. And even with the Jane example you just gave, I would even have initially thought it's more important like what they're eating rather than like when they're eating. But I think the habit loop aspect that you brought up is really interesting and actually really important. That flipped me. That I do think is really underrated, of the consistency throughout the day where it becomes regimented, like, and your body is like running on I don't know what the word, like it's like on a clock, right? It's like, hey, like, boom, like we're gonna eat breakfast here at this time when it's my lunchtime.
I mean, you see it all the time with people that come in to work out after getting off of work, right? It's like, I think we know who those people are. They come in and they're like, I didn't eat all day today.
Yeah, or just,
and it's well, you're about to have a shitty workout.
It's like, I had 5 cookies before I showed up here.
Yeah.
Like, well, this is gonna be.
It's like, I didn't eat anything all day, so I like inhaled the musubi in the car ride over, and it's like, well, you're about to feel like garbage.
Totally.
And that's more of a timing thing and a consistency thing.
And that's interesting, because like it is at the end of the day like what they are eating or what they're not eating, but it relies on the timing of those things.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I agree with you. I think that's a really interesting perspective, but I would for sure have to agree with you. Underrated for sure on that front.
Yeah. But anabolic window, all that.
That's bullshit.
Bullshit.
Yeah. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Well, hey.
All right. 3 questions. I feel like that's a good, solid.
I like it. It was a great conversation. Really good suggestions. Thank you guys again for all of them. If you guys have any more that you want to hear about, again, leave them below in the comments, or hit us up on Instagram and leave a question there. And as always, if you guys want to work with us as well, you can click on the link below, click the link in our bio on Instagram, and start the journey, or head over to itsmean.com and learn more about us. But thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Overrated or Underrated, and here's the next one. Chi, please sponsor us.
Sponsor us.
We drink these. They're like crack.
See you.
See you.